There's a unique kind of trust we place in the world today. With a few taps on a screen, we summon a stranger in their own car to our exact location. We climb into their back seat, a small, enclosed space, and tell them where we live. We surrender our navigation, our direction, and for a few minutes, our safety, all for the sake of convenience. We do it every day, millions of us. We assume the person in the driver's seat is who they say they are. We assume the blue line on the map is the path we'll take. But what happens when that trust is broken? What happens when the person you've paid to take you home has other plans? Tonight, we're not talking about fiction. These are 4 stories from people who got into an Uber, expecting a simple ride, and found themselves in a nightmare. My name is Chloe, and I was a university student working late at the campus library. It was finals week, so my brain was fried. By the time I left, it was almost 2 a.m. The campus was a ghost town, shrouded in a thick fog that swallowed the streetlights. Walking home wasn't an option, so I did what I always did. I called Uber. The app said my driver, a guy named Robert, was a minute away in a silver sedan. Sure enough, the car pulled up. It matched the description. The license plate matched. I hopped in the back, exhausted, and mumbled a hi. The driver was an older man, maybe in his late 50s, with a neat gray beard and glasses. He seemed perfectly normal. He confirmed my name, and we set off. For the first 5 minutes, everything was fine. The route was the one I took every time. But then, instead of taking a main turn towards my apartment complex, he kept going straight. I figured it was a weird GPS reroute because of construction or something. I didn't think much of it at first, but we kept driving, leaving the familiar, well-lit streets behind and entering an old industrial part of town I'd never seen before. The buildings were dark, skeletal warehouses with broken windows. I think my apartment is back that way, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He just smiled into the rearview mirror. Just a small detour, Chloe. Something I need to pick up. Won't take a minute. A cold feeling started to creep up my spine. Why would an Uber driver run a personal errand with a passenger in the car? It was unprofessional, and more importantly, it was weird. The friendly silence that had filled the car now felt heavy and threatening. We turned down an even darker alley, the car's headlights cutting through the fog to reveal a dead end. He pulled over next to a graffiti-covered brick wall and turned off the engine. The silence was deafening. What are we doing here? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My hand was already on my phone, ready to dial 911. He turned around in his seat to face me. The kind, grandfatherly look was gone. His eyes were intense, almost feverish. I just wanted to show you something, he said softly. He reached over to the passenger seat and picked up a worn leather satchel. He opened it, and the smell of old paper and dust filled the car. He pulled out a photograph. It was old, black and white, of a young woman who looked to be in her early 20s. "This is Eleanor," he said. "She used to work at the diner on 6th Street. Beautiful, wasn't she?" I just stared, confused and terrified. I don't know her." He ignored me, pulling out another photo. A different woman, this one from what looked like the 80s, with big hair and bright lipstick. "And this is Sarah. She was a nurse." He pulled out another and another. Each one was a different woman from a different era. There were dozens of them. "I don't understand," I said, my heart hammering against my ribs. His smile widened, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're all so busy now. Phones, screens, rushing everywhere. You don't pay attention. You get into cars with strangers every day. You forget that there's a world out there, a world that remembers." He paused, looking at me intently. "I just like to collect memories, reminders of people who passed through the city, people who might otherwise be forgotten." That's when I realized what he was doing. He wasn't a kidnapper in the traditional sense. He was something else, something far stranger. He was a self-appointed historian of the forgotten, and his method was terrifyingly intimate. This wasn't just a scary Uber ride. It felt like I was being inducted into a museum I didn't want to be a part of. He then pulled out a small, instant camera. "Just one picture, Chloe," he said, his voice pleading. "For the collection, so no one forgets the student who studied so hard." That was it. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I acted. I threw my heavy backpack at his head as hard as I could. It caught him by surprise, and he grunted, dropping the camera. In that split second, I unlocked the door, scrambled out, and ran. I didn't look back. You're right. My mistake, Mark said, sighing. Can you just take me to the Grand Weaver? I'll add it in the app and pay the difference, of course. Kevin's friendly demeanor suddenly vanished. He shook his head. Sorry, pal. This ride is over. You gotta get out and book a new one. What? Why? It's only another 10 minutes from here. I'll pay for it, Mark insisted. My shift is over. This was my last ride. You gotta get out. His voice was firm, cold. It made no sense. Why would a driver turn down a guaranteed fare for another 10 minutes of work? But he was insistent. Mark, not wanting to argue with a stranger in a run-down part of town late at night, reluctantly agreed. He got out of the car, and Kevin sped off, leaving him standing in front of the desolate Weaver Inn. Mark pulled out his phone to order a new ride. No signal. He looked around. The street was empty and poorly lit. A sense of unease settled over him. This was the kind of situation that could quickly escalate, a prime example of rideshare danger that begins after the ride is technically over. He decided his only option was to go into the inn and ask the clerk to call him a cab. He pushed open the heavy glass door. The clerk, a large, unshaven man, didn't even look up from his TV. "Excuse me," Mark said, approaching the desk. "My Uber dropped me at the wrong place. My phone's not getting service. Could you possibly call a taxi for me?" The clerk slowly turned his head. He looked Mark up and down, a strange, predatory gleam in his eye. "No taxis come out this way this time of night," he grunted. "Your Uber driver should have known that." A chill went down Mark's spine. "What do you mean? This ain't a good part of town for tourists to be wandering around in," the clerk said, a slow, ugly smile spreading across his face. "Kevin knows that. He brings guys like you here all the time." The blood drained from Mark's face. It wasn't a mistake. It was a setup. Kevin, the friendly driver, was in on it. He was a Judas, delivering unsuspecting passengers to this place. This wasn't just a story of a bad ride. It was beginning to feel like one of those true crime stories you see on the news. Just then, a door behind the counter creaked open, and another man, even larger than the clerk, stepped out. He was wiping his greasy hands on a rag and grinning at Mark. "Looks like we've had a guest," the second man said, his voice a low rumble. Mark didn't wait to find out what they wanted. He bolted. He ran out of the hotel and just picked a direction, sprinting down the dark street. He heard the door slam open behind him and shouting, but he didn't dare look back. He ran for what felt like miles, his lungs burning, his dress shoes slipping on the pavement. Finally, he saw the welcome glow of a 24-hour gas station in the distance. He burst inside, gasping for breath, and begged the cashier to call the police. The police confirmed his fears. The Weaver Inn was a known front for a robbery ring. Uber and taxi drivers were paid to drop off well-dressed, unsuspecting tourists who would then be cornered and robbed inside the hotel. Mark had been seconds away from losing his wallet, his watch, and who knows what else. He had trusted the app, but he had made one small mistake, and it almost led him into a perfectly laid trap. This story is from a woman named Jenna, and it serves as a chilling reminder to always check that the driver matches their profile. Jenna was meeting friends for a birthday dinner in the city. She was running a little late, so she quickly ordered an Uber. Her driver was supposed to be a man named David, with a high rating and a friendly, smiling profile picture. He looked to be in his mid-30s, clean-cut, with kind eyes. The app said he was driving a black SUV. A few minutes later, a black SUV pulled up. The license plate was a match. Jenna opened the back door and slid in, saying, "Hi, are you David?" The man in the driver's seat grunted in response. Jenna glanced at him and her stomach dropped. This was not the man from the profile picture, not even close. The man driving the car was at least 20 years older, with a gaunt, weathered face, a scraggly beard, and cold, hollow eyes. He looked tired and agitated. The profile said. Jenna started, but he cut her off. "It's my brother's car," he snapped, not looking at her. "I'm just helping him out tonight. Same car, same account. What's the problem?" Jenna's internal alarms were blaring. This was wrong. Everything about it was wrong. But she was in the car. It was a busy street. What could she do? Make a scene? Accuse him of something? She was late, and maybe it was an innocent explanation. Against her better judgment, she decided to stay. "No problem," she mumbled and buckled her seatbelt, her hand gripping her phone in her pocket. The ride started, and the strange feeling only intensified. The car was filthy. Old fast food wrappers littered the floor, and there was a strange, sour smell in the air. The driver was erratic, speeding up and then slamming on the brakes, muttering to himself under his breath. He kept glancing at her in the rearview mirror, but not in a friendly way. It was a suspicious, almost accusatory glare. This was no longer just an awkward ride. This was becoming a genuinely scary Uber ride. She opened her own map app on her phone to follow along. For the first few blocks, he was on the right path. Then he took a sudden, sharp right turn onto a side street, away from the main route to the restaurant. "This isn't the way," Jenna said, her voice shaking slightly. "It's a shortcut," he grumbled. "GPS is stupid." But the shortcut led them into a labyrinth of narrow, one-way residential streets. It was quiet here, with fewer cars and people. She felt a surge of panic. She activated the Share My Trip status feature and sent it to her friend, typing a quick message. "Driver is not the right guy. Acting weird." He saw her typing in the mirror. "Who are you texting?" he demanded, his voice sharp. "Just my friend. Let her know I'm on my way," Jenna said, trying to sound casual. He laughed, a short, barking sound with no humor in it. "Friends can't help you." That was the moment pure terror set in. This wasn't just a grumpy driver. This was a threat. He made another turn, and another, seemingly driving in circles. It felt like he was disorienting her, or maybe waiting for something. She remembered all the true crime stories she'd ever heard, and they all seemed to start this way. A small deviation, a weird feeling, a moment of hesitation. Her friend started calling her. Jenna answered, putting on speaker. "Jenna? What's going on? Your location is all over the place." Her friend's frantic voice filled the car. The driver slammed on the brakes, turning to glare at Jenna, his face contorted with rage. "Hang up that phone. Now!" Jenna knew this was her only chance. While he was distracted and yelling, she did the only thing she could. She unbuckled, threw her door open, and leaped out of the still idling car. She stumbled but didn't fall, and just ran. She heard him yell an obscenity behind her, followed by the squeal of tires as he sped away. She ran down the street, screaming for help, until a family sitting on their porch saw her and called 911. Later, the police found the SUV abandoned a few miles away. The real David, the man from the profile picture, was eventually found. He had been assaulted and his car had been stolen earlier that evening. The man who had been driving Jenna had a long criminal record. She was lucky to have escaped. Her story is a terrifying testament to the fact that the license plate isn't enough. If the driver doesn't match the picture, don't get in the car. Ever. Our final story tonight is perhaps the most unsettling, because the threat wasn't about where the ride was going, but about who was already there. This comes from a couple, Liam and Sarah. They were flying home from their honeymoon, landing late at night. They were happy, tired, and just wanted to get home to their own bed. They ordered an Uber XL to fit their luggage. The app assigned them a driver named Hector in a large minivan. When a minivan pulled up to the curb, they were relieved. The driver got out and helped Liam load their suitcases into the bag. He was a quiet, polite man who matched his profile. Everything seemed perfectly normal. They got in a back seat, and Hector started the drive. The minivan was dark. The windows were tinted, and there was no interior light on. Sarah leaned her head on Liam's shoulder, ready to doze off. The ride was silent, except for the low hum of the engine. About 10 minutes into the trip, Liam shifted his position slightly to get more comfortable. As he did, his foot brushed against something on the floor in front of him. It felt like a duffel bag. He didn't think anything of it. A few minutes later, Sarah whispered, "Is it cold in here?" Liam agreed. A draft seemed to be coming from the front of the car. He looked towards the front passenger seat. In the deep shadows, he could just make out a shape. He squinted. It wasn't a bag or a coat thrown over the seat. It was a person. Someone was sitting silently in the front passenger seat. Liam's blood ran cold. He nudged Sarah gently, trying not to be obvious. He tilted his head towards the front. Her eyes widened as she saw it too. A person, completely still, shrouded in darkness. They hadn't said a word. The driver hadn't mentioned them. They had gotten into the car without ever realizing they weren't alone with the driver. Who was this person? A friend? A family member? Why were they so silent? Why hadn't the driver said anything? Every possible explanation that ran through their minds was worse than the last. The silence from the front of the car was immense and terrifying. It felt deliberate. It felt predatory. This was a new level of rideshare danger, the kind you could never anticipate. You check the driver, you check the car, but you don't expect a hidden passenger. Liam slowly and quietly pulled out his phone. He didn't want to alert the driver or the silent figure. He opened the Notes app and typed, "There is someone in the front seat. Don't react." He showed the screen to Sarah. He saw the flicker of panic in her eyes, but she did a remarkable job of staying calm. She just gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. They were still about 20 minutes from their house, on a dark highway. There was nowhere to go. They were trapped. The minutes crawled by like hours. Every bump in the road made them jump. They were hyper-aware of every sound, every movement. The person in the front seat remained utterly still. Were they asleep? Or were they just waiting? Liam decided he had to do something. He couldn't just ride all the way to his house and lead these people to his front door. He put his arm around Sarah and spoke, trying to make his voice sound as normal and cheerful as possible. "Oh, honey, you know what? My sister just texted. She's at that 24-hour diner right off this next exit. She wants to see our pictures from the trip. Can we just stop there? It's on the way." It was a complete lie, but it was the only thing he could think of. The diner was a public place, well-lit, and always busy. The driver, Hector, was silent for a long moment. Liam could see his eyes in the rearview mirror. He felt like he was being studied. Finally, Hector said, "Okay." As they took the exit, Liam's heart pounded. He could see the bright lights of the diner ahead. It was their sanctuary. Hector pulled into the parking lot, but he didn't pull up to the front door. He stopped in a dark corner of the lot, away from the entrance. "Here is good," Hector said, his voice flat. Before he could even turn the engine off, Liam and Sarah were out of the car. They didn't even grab their luggage. They just ran towards the diner's entrance, not looking back. They burst inside and didn't stop until they were at the counter, surrounded by people. When they finally dared to look outside, the minivan was gone. Their luggage was gone with it. They called the police, who were deeply disturbed by the story. They contacted Uber, who immediately suspended Hector's account. But the police were never able to locate him or the mysterious silent passenger. Liam and Sarah lost their luggage, but they know they escaped something far, far worse that night. They never found out who that person was or what their intentions were. And it's the not knowing that haunts them the most. The screen, the app, the 5-star rating, they all create an illusion of safety. But as these stories show, that illusion can be shattered in an instant. The thin line between a convenient ride home and a life-altering ordeal is sometimes nothing more than a wrong turn, a mistaken identity, or a passenger you never knew was there. So the next time you get into that back seat, remember to be aware. Share your ride, check your driver, and trust your instincts. Because you never truly know who's behind the wheel. If these stories sent a chill down your spine, please show your support by hitting that like button. And for more true, unsettling stories, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. Stay safe out there.